I can't believe some of the things I see, and in particular, the actions by our leaders and the joy of giving away our money and indebting our children and grandchildren forever is just beyond me. So, maybe they'll pull out that Treasury clause that or the Federal Reserve clause that allows them to remonetize the price of gold, and this will all go away. Until then, we are a country that's literally lost its mind from within by allowing this stuff to happen. And instead of fixing our infrastructure and getting our borders in order, we give it to a war. We've given $200 billion to these people, and there's no congressional oversight. We don't even know where it's gone. Who's spending it?
On Wednesday, April 17th, the International Monetary Fund issued a stark warning about the high and rapidly increasing level of the U.S. national debt. The IMF's warning was not a mere caution, but a dire prediction, stating that this debt risks driving up borrowing costs worldwide and undermining global financial stability. The IMF highlighted that increased government spending, growing public debt, and elevated interest rates in the US had contributed to high and volatile bond yields, thereby raising the risk of higher risks in other advanced and developing economies. Loose fiscal policy in the United States exerts upward pressure on global interest rates and the dollar, said Vitor Gaspar, the director of the IMF's Fiscal Affairs Department, during a press briefing. It pushes up funding costs in the rest of the world, thereby exacerbating existing fragilities and risks. A day before the report was released, the organization issued a warning about public spending and borrowing, which it said were contributing to an overheating of the U.S. economy and making it harder for the Federal Reserve to defeat inflation. It added that the U.S. almost $35 trillion debt burden could keep rates higher for longer, which would cause various boomerang effects, including a devastation of the financial markets. In a recent interview with Arcadia Economics, renowned bullion dealer and financial commentator Andy Schectman speaks broadly about the state of things in the United States and reveals a huge plot to take down the country from the inside out. According to Andy, the political class has made a huge mess of the U.S. economy and the general state of affairs in the country to, among other things, intentionally undermine the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency and hasten the transition to centrally controlled digital currencies. During the interview, Andy issued several dire warnings about the general state of affairs, highlighting serious patterns that many Americans seem to be blissfully ignoring. He warns that the ultimate collapse is much closer than we can imagine, and only an immediate transition to a gold standard will save our economy and country. We will present clips from Andy's interview, but before we do, please take a little time to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications for more videos like this. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Yeah, well, I think if Trump doesn't win, you'll see Lael Brainerd as the head of the Fed, who is a modern monetary theorist, who helped develop the CBDC with MIT, who ran point for FedNow. And on the other end, you have Judy Shelton, who is the opposite end of the spectrum. She wants to bring back a gold standard. And certainly, I think that regardless of how this all plays out, in order for a system to have any credibility moving forward, it needs to have some sort of a peg. And we've talked about this before. Even Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, said a CBDC that is not pegged to something is fiat. And I keep going back to gold being the only other tier one reserve asset, as mentioned by the Bank of International Settlements. I keep looking at all the gold that not only has been purchased by all the central banks, but also repatriated. And interestingly enough, even through a Freedom of Information Act, we're not finding out how much gold has left the Fed, who's been bringing it home, and why don't they want to tell us. So, yeah, I mean, and if you look at the strength of the dollar, it's crippling a lot of countries right now. The strength of the dollar, it's very unusual. Even though the people in this country have seen their purchasing power get clobbered through inflation, the strength of the dollar around the world is outpacing much of that inflation. And it's making it very, very hard for a lot of these countries to purchase commodities that are valued in dollars. And a lot of people think it's because of all the dollar-denominated debt creating the demand for dollars to pay back the debt. And maybe that's the case. This is a short-term strength of the dollar as far as I am concerned. And I can tell you that much of the world would really like a dollar that isn't as strong as it is right now. And George Gammon did a very interesting podcast on this very topic recently, talking about how many countries are really struggling under the strength of a dollar, and that strength is completely and totally unjustified as far as I'm concerned. I mean, how can it be justified when we are witnessing record debt accumulation, $1 trillion every 3 months, where we're a country that, it's 175 trillion in the hole. And I was looking at something the other day, 77 trillion underfunded in Social Security, Medicare Part B being the largest liability, underfunded by 99.5 trillion, Medicaid D or Medicare D, which is for prescription drugs, missing 22.1 trillion. And, we're a country where here again, $8.9 trillion in government debt, or 25% of all the outstanding debt that's on balance sheet anyway, pretty damn close to it, has to be refinanced at much higher rates over the next 12 months. And, when you see countries like China selling treasuries and buying gold, things are changing. And I think gold is being remonetized in the world's view. And maybe this is why it was reclassified tier 1. Certainly, there's been a lot of talk, and certainly you and I have talked about it a lot, that, and you hear Vince talking about, a lot of people talking about that gold, because it carries no counterparty risk, because it's outperformed the bond market, is being looked at as a substitute to the bond market. I believe that. I really do believe that. And so I think the world is looking at gold a little bit differently now than it has been perceived for quite some time, and will have a very pivotal role moving forward. And certainly, if Judy Shelton gets in behind Trump and is the head of the Fed, and they move in that direction, it is a massive step in the right direction to gain credibility that we seem to be squandering more and more every single day.
In its report, the IMF noted that while the US fiscal policy presents a huge challenge to other economies worldwide, the US also faces some risks if things are not quickly handled. According to the international organization, investors are demanding higher returns on US bonds because of lingering concerns over sticky inflation, the uncertain trajectory of monetary policy, and the ever-increasing debt burden. The organization warned that as long as US debt levels are elevated, the risk premium on government debt may remain high, keeping government funding costs higher for longer. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a non-profit organization, the U.S. government spent more to service its debts in fiscal year 2023 than it did on each of housing, transport, and higher education. The situation is expected to worsen this year. Yet, Andy believes high debt and debt interests are not the issues undermining the continued existence of the United States. According to the Miles Franklin president, a greater danger lies ahead, and it's being fully supported by most of the political class. Let's get back to the interview.
But in terms of the Ukraine, we've given them since February of 2022 over $200 billion in aid. And as I'm going to read to you something from Rand Paul. He says, Ukrainian flags fly in the chamber of the United States House of Representatives as they vote to send more of your hard-earned money to a corrupt foreign regime. And just like that, they shout, Ukraine, Ukraine, while happily working to secure Ukraine's borders, but not ours, where we've let 12 million people into this country illegally. And, $5 billion to fix a border wall was outrageous, but $200 billion to a war we should have nothing to do with is okay. And while we let our infrastructure and our border fall apart, it's just absolutely crazy. Now, what I want people to look up, and I'm going to read some of this stuff to you, but there is something called the Cloward-Piven theory that was taught at Columbia, and Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven were two professors who taught at Columbia University. And so all of these people who are center to policy are Columbia grads. Now, the whole theory of the Cloward-Piven strategy is to overwhelm the United States economy to create a systemic failure, destroying capitalism and our country from within. The primary objective of the strategy is to create chaos with the hopes of destroying America's capitalist economy and replacing it with a socialist system that includes guaranteed incomes. A massive drive to recruit the poor onto the welfare rolls. The point of surging welfare claims is to enroll as many individuals as it takes to send the United States into an economic crisis. Now think of the 12 million illegal immigrants here. That certainly does the trick. They estimate currently that 63% of non-US citizens are actively accessing one or more forms of taxpayer-funded welfare, where comparatively, just 35% of US households receive some form of welfare. So almost double the amount of people who are illegally in this country. Cloward and Piven specifically mentioned targeting America's large cities for their colossal welfare push. Now think about how all this is happening. A series of welfare drives in large cities, we believe, impel action on a new federal program to distribute income. In their blueprints, Cloward and Piven revealed that the best way to achieve their goals is to create a new loyal voting bloc out of the rapidly increasing number of welfare recipients. According to them, if organizers can deliver millions of cash in benefits to the ghetto masses, it seems reasonable to expect that the masses will deliver their loyalty to their benefactors. With the record level of illegal immigration through their complicity in the border crisis, this is left aiming to develop arms of loyal serfs who will work to destroy America, whether knowingly or unknowingly. According to the Cloward-Piven theory, they insist that the intentional destruction of America's major systems will compel the federal government to develop a communist universal basic income program. They both agree that the mainstream media, both Cloward and Piven agree that the mainstream media would be a critical role in their organized attack against America. To quote Cloward and Piven, as the crisis develops, it will be important to use the mass media to inform the broader liberal community about the inefficiencies and injustices of welfare. So if I want people to download this or just Google Cloward-Piven theory, and everything that they are doing is happening right now. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen, and it couldn't be drawn up any better. They are overwhelming the system by all of the money that needs to be paid to make the system work. It blows up the system from within.
In his interviews, Andy frequently mentions the concept of logarithmic decay, a gradual collapse that begins little by little, so little that it is completely imperceptible to the undiscerning and unobservant. Then, it becomes more pronounced, and everyone realizes something is happening, but they still cannot detect the magnitude at which it will happen. Then, one day, without any warning at all, everything collapses. This is what Andy believes is happening with the global financial system at the moment. It is definitely no coincidence that central banks, the custodians of this system, are seeking protection in gold and silver, buying at the highest levels they've done in more than half a century. Do you agree we are heading for a collapse, starting with the global banking system? What role do you think gold and silver will play in the coming collapse? Please drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.